Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Seducing My Best Friend by Lindsey Hart. Narrated by C.J. Bloom. Chapter 1. Jesse.
Yo, Jesse. Earth to Jesse.
Sam snapped his annoying-as-hell fingers and leaned in with an annoying-as-hell look on his annoying-as-hell face. He had a pizza stain on the left corner of his mouth, and his eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. Probably still hungover from his drinking last night. And today was only Thursday. The guy seriously had no abstinence.
You're rich now. When are you going to grow up and start adulting? You know, getting a girlfriend, getting married, moving on. I'm tired of Mom calling me up, pinning all her hopes for a grandkid on me. Never gonna happen. I need you to grow a set and take the pressure off me. Don't know why she's given up on you, but thinks it's still going to happen for me.
Jesse leaned back against the leather couch in his massive living room, a sweaty beard dripping into his hand, onto his lap. Brothers. Can't live with 'em, can't live without. Okay, whoever coined that phrase was wrong. Dead wrong. The first part was just spot on. Jesse Sampson could definitely not live with his brother. He used to. Back in college, they shared a tiny apartment. Since Sam was a slob and never bothered to pick up more than his dirty underwear in the morning, sometimes turn them inside out and put them back on, there were fights every single day. It wasn't that he was OCD or anything. He wasn't even a clean freak. It was just that he hated finding moldy pizza boxes all over the apartment. Food wrappers in his brother's bed on the odd chance he braved the space to go in there for something of his the bastard had borrowed. God, there was one day when he'd been searching for his phone after falling asleep on their decrepit couch, when he'd reached in and pulled out a half-eaten burger covered in blue fuzz. It was too much. The mess. The constant parties that Sam threw. The beer bottles littering every single surface. He'd moved out and shacked up with his bestie, who just happened to be a woman. A beautiful woman. A sexy woman. A girl he'd known since they were in diapers. She was always just the girl that his parents made him hang out with, because his mom happened to babysit her while her mom was at work. But on the first day of kindergarten, she became his best friend. She'd pushed him down the big metal slide in the playground and broke his glasses. Not on purpose. She wasn't mean like that. They were horsing around at the top of the slide, too big for their little britches, and after 10 minutes of encouraging him to let go, she got tired of waiting and gave him a not-so-gentle shove. He went flying down that metal horror, a thing straight out of every 5-year-old's nightmare. Jesse remembered the slide was so damn hot that it burned right through his grass-stained jeans. He flew off the other end, seriously sprouted a pair of wings, and landed face down in the rocks. Yes, rocks. Someone had the bright idea to fill the playground full of abrasive rocks. So yeah, bit it good. Got a mouthful of sandy gravel and his glasses went flying. Broke the lenses right out of them. He'd cried. He'd cried about his scraped palms and the gravel in his mouth. He'd cried with fear and pain. And she was there, whooshed right down that slide after him, except with far more grace. She scooped him up into her arms and held him against her warm, sunshine-scented chest. The curtain of her dark, fine hair enveloped him, and she told him not to be scared. Told him he was a hero, that he looked like a bird, that she wouldn't have been brave enough to go down if it wasn't for him. Told him not to cry. And he was done. At 5 years old, he'd made a vow, Sydney or nothing. Unfortunately, it was mostly nothing.
So, I just met this really hot chick the other day, Sam said, slurring his words slightly.
Brothers. Can't live without them. That was definitely not true. He could definitely live without Sam coming over to his place a few times a week and insulting him if he could live without Sydney. Sam has always been big, tall, blonde, and athletic. Sam never had to wear geeky glasses or fill into hand-me-down shoes that were always just a little too big and made him walk funny. Sam never had to have his pant legs rolled up because they were a mile too long. Sam never had his cheeks pinched because he was just too freaking cute. Sam was one of those homecomings, all-American quarterback types. Seriously, he was the high school team's quarterback. He was homecoming king. His was pretty much one of those typical stories. Popular in high school, had everything, girls, friends, booze, a free ride in college. He liked to party, a little too much. Blew it on the field, blew his scholarship, dropped out. Liked to live the glory days and hang out with his old buds every single weekend. Made possible by the fact that they hadn't moved on to bigger, better things either. Not even 16 years after graduating. Still lived in the same Cleveland suburb they grew up in. Still partied hard and chased women. Did the bare minimum to scrape by at a shit job. Still had the nerve to come over without knocking, put his disgusting dirty shoes up on the coffee table, crack a beer he hadn't paid for, raid the fridge for a sandwich he made with groceries that weren't his, and tell his younger brother what to do with his life. So yeah, brothers. Definitely can't live with them. Definitely could live without them. Okay, probably could live without them. Jesse, man? Sam leaned forward on the couch and did that annoying thing that he knew Jesse hated. He snapped his fingers right under his nose. Where'd you go there? You just checked right out. I'm tired. Jesse ground out beyond irritated. It's midnight on a Thursday night. You barge in here half an hour ago, take my kitchen apart, and slam up your muddy shoes on my coffee table after trailing them through my house. So, you have a maid. Sam bit off another huge portion of that sandwich he'd actually found the skills to assemble. Impressive, since he was usually limited to cracking the top off a beer and chewing loudly, with his mouth open. That's not the point. Totally the point. If I was rich enough to not have to clean up after myself, I wouldn't. Jesse rolled his eyes. You don't now, and never have, so what would be the difference? And Mom isn't your maid. Just an FYI. Shut it. You live in their basement. You should at least bother to keep the stench of rotting food and old bed sheets from reaching the main floor. Do you even wash them in between, sessions? Sam flipped him the bird and jammed the rest of the sandwich into his mouth. That's sick, man. You're my brother. Not discussing that with you. No, but you think it's okay to bring home a parade of women into Mom and Dad's house when you're 34 years old? Tell me how exactly Mom has her hopes pinned on you for a grandchild. Oh, wait. She's not seriously hoping you'll slip up one night, is she? Because that's just wrong. And I know Mom, and she wants a grandkid the legit way, committed relationship and all. You're a prick, you know that? There was no heat behind Sam's words, though. Jesse crossed his arms. He let his beer sweat away onto his lap without taking a sip. He didn't even want it, but Sam had, of course, cracked the top and passed it over. Like it was his house, and Jesse barged in right before midnight. Not the other way around. Definitely not. Just because you date here and there doesn't mean Mom doesn't know that you're never going to give her a grandchild. Ever. Because you're never going to be with anyone long enough to produce one. She knows that Skinny was the only one for you, always has. Since she won't give you the time of day, went off and did her own thing down there in San Francisco, and hasn't called up in 10 years, she knows that she's shit out of luck when it comes to you. She's accepted that you're going to be single for the rest of your life. Sam picked up the other half of the sandwich and put it to his mouth. Raw rage rose up in Jesse, choking off his ability to be reasonable, or sane, or to even breathe. He could deal with the other shit, but no one, not even Sam, walked in there and called Sydney Skidney. He used to call her that all the time when they were kids. But that was a big hell no, and Jesse was like a bull waiting for that red flag to be waved in front of his face. Before he even knew what he was doing, he reached out and knocked the damn sandwich out of Sam's hand. It hit the floor, sprayed mustard, mayo, cheese, and salami all over the hardwood and up the side of the couch. "Get the hell out," he ground out. "Now." "Aw, come on. I was just having a bit of fun." "It's true. It's true, and you know it, and that's why you're getting your damn panties in a twist." Jesse sat back on the couch. He realized that he'd spilled his beer down his shirt, and that only made him more pissed off. It was on the tip of his tongue to ask his brother why he couldn't just get his shit together, stop leeching off their parents, which was really leeching off him, because he was the one who had given them the money to retire, paid them back for all they'd done for him, and grow the fuck up. But he bit it back. Sam knew. He knew that he'd screwed up his life in a big way. He didn't know how to fix it. And even though Jesse didn't want to feel sorry for the guy, he kind of did. And he was his brother. The curse of can't live without him and all that. Instead of retorting something he'd definitely regret, he flicked open his phone and distracted himself with a few mindless minutes of browsing the black void of social media while he calmed the hell down. Since his company took off in a big way and people knew who he was, he had an account under a fake name that was kept ultra-private with only his close friends and family on there. He did it just because his mom had broken down almost a year back and begged him to make one, just so his grandma and grandpa in Georgia could keep in touch. He didn't do calls, and he was admittedly shitty at personal emails, so he kind of got her point. He couldn't stand to see his mom crying, so he'd given in, let her make it for him. He rarely used it. Correction. He rarely used it because his mom had gone and done the craziest thing and added Sydney Underhill to it, along with most of his old high school and college friends that he was still close with. His mom didn't know what happened with him and Sid, so he could excuse her for that. Sid never reached out to him, never even acknowledged he was on her friends list, other than accepting the request in the first place. Probably because it was the token nice girl thing to do. And even though she'd moved on with her life and moved away after he spouted off that bunch of nonsense about loving her and wanting to marry her one day when they were both adult enough to do it, she was still nice. Probably because, to her, he'd always be that little kid she held after he'd bombed off the slide. Her geeky friend. Her roommate. A guy who was so deep in the friend zone it wasn't even funny. Because, yeah, it was definitely not funny what happened. It ruined everything. She'd moved away the next damn morning, just packed the most important things in her car, and left, without a word. 10 years, 1 month, and 6 days ago. He'd kept track, because he was entirely, utterly pathetic. Jesse kept mindlessly scrolling, talking himself down from smashing his fist into his brother's face, which would have been about the 10th time that month. His mom didn't need another headache or a bloody nose to clean up, so he got himself the freaking heck under control. His thumb kept flipping, moving that screen up, his eyes seeing none of it until he stopped, because he'd stop every single time he saw her name. Sydney Underhill. It was the large S that caught his eyes, but then he scanned the rest of what she'd written. His stomach bottomed out. The world stopped. Time stopped. Everything stopped. "Looks like you're in luck," he found himself saying woodenly into the room, just putting those impossible words out there because they bubbled up inside of him and erupted from his throat before he could take them back. "Looks like I'm getting married." Chapter 2. Sydney. The infuriating pounding on her door could only mean one thing. Her mother. Which, after celebrating her 32nd birthday in complete style with her friends, Even if it was a Thursday night and they showed up at her apartment unannounced and took her out and got her completely hammered at a really nice restaurant on really expensive drinks that they splurged for even though they didn't have the money, was something she couldn't deal with. Sydney had called in sick to work. No one there knew it was her birthday the night before, so she had no doubt she'd get away with the flu she claimed to have. Her aching head, sloshing stomach, elevated pulse, and the saliva that flooded her mouth like a warning every single time she moved an inch on her bed certainly felt like a bad flu. She couldn't remember the last time she'd ever drunk so much, or been so hungover. Maybe it was just that she didn't really drink anymore, other than a glass of wine here and there, mostly so that she could stomach the terrible dates she went on. She didn't touch anything more than tea. Her best friend, Jasmine, rolled up to her apartment at 8 the night before. Sydney remembered that much. She'd brought an entire army of their friends with her, or at least, they were Jasmine's friends, so that was close enough. She couldn't let her wallow in self-pity on her birthday. It had been all of a few months since she'd found out that her boyfriend was cheating on her. For the entire 6 months that they'd gone out. She'd gone over to his place to surprise him. There wasn't anyone there with him, but by the time she hit the bed with Blaine, the lights were still on and she'd found some sketchy red hairs in the bed that clearly didn't belong to either of them. The whole thing came spilling out, how he just couldn't help himself, how he was bored and thought their relationship was stale but he didn't want to lose her, blah blah fucking blah. She'd basically kept herself locked in her apartment since it happened, even though she wasn't that interested in the guy. Or any guy. Or in dating in general. It was just the assholishness and the humiliation of the act that burned her up and made her want to hibernate in her apartment and never come back out. Just thinking about it brought a hot wave of bile splashing up Sydney's throat. She groaned and turned over in the bed, her entire body protesting both the pounding at the door and the movement. She balled up the sheet in her hand and called out a savage greeting. "If you have a key, why the heck do you even bother knocking?" The pounding kept right on going, and she cursed her mom. Her mom also moved out to San Francisco to be closer to Sydney. Really, it was because she couldn't deal with trying to make her own way in the real world and needed the help. But maybe that was just semantics. Being an only child, her mom was her best friend, when it came right down to it. So Sydney tried not to mind the constant loss of privacy and the many boundaries her mom crossed. She had keys to the apartment, and unfortunately, Sydney had come home quite a few times to find her mom there, doing laundry that wasn't hers, rearranging the fridge and cupboards, doing the dishes. It was completely humiliating. "God, I'm coming!" Sydney shoved off the bed in one harsh movement that brought on a volley of stars at the edges of her darkened vision. She mumbled curses, mostly at herself and Jasmine, under her breath as she made her way to the door. She flung it open without thinking, so sure that it was going to be her mom standing there that she hadn't even bothered to change out of her rumpled pink pajama shorts and matching tank. On her way to the buzzer to let her mom up, since she obviously must have forgotten her keys, she realized how dank the apartment smelled, like she really was an animal hibernating in there. Yuck. She hurried over across her small living room to crack open the large window that stood above the couch. A rush of cool summer morning air rushed up to greet her, pebbling her skin and, unfortunately, her nipples as well. She stalked over to the intercom, stubbing her toe on the couch in the process. She tried not to curse as she sucked her bottom lip between her teeth and blinked back tears at the pain tearing all the way up her leg. She slammed down the button and waited. Not more than a minute later, a knock sounded at her door. Sydney walked over, muttering things about her mom being forgetful and making up extra keys just so she could glue them to her forehead. She ripped open the door and let out a shriek of surprise at finding a man standing there, a tall, middle-aged man with graying hair and an immaculate black suit. She quickly slammed her arm up over her breasts, since even she could tell that her nipples were hard as rocks from the open window blowing in cool air. It didn't help that the old dude's eyes went straight to her chest. When she looked back up at his face, There was a flush riding high on his cheeks, which made her want to die on the spot. "Jesus," she muttered. "I don't know who you are, but I'm pretty sure you have the wrong place." The guy actually pulled a sleek-looking cell out of his pocket and double-checked it.
"Nope, I have the right address. Miss Underhill?"
No." Sydney went to slam the door in his face, but he stuck a polished shoe out, blocking her way. He flipped the phone around in one wrinkled hand that was surprisingly tanned to reveal a picture that was unmistakably her.
"I believe this is you. No?"
"No," she ground out. She tried even harder to shut the door, actually moved it back an inch and slammed it forward, but the guy's foot didn't budge. Something inside of her nearly snapped, and fear pulsed through her already pounding brain. What if the guy had ties to the mafia or something? Had she done something to piss off someone from the underworld? Holy fucking shit. The night before was pretty much a complete blackout after the first few drinks. What the hell had she done? Seeing as she'd woken up, aching all over and cursing herself in her own bed, she was pretty sure that nothing crazy went down and her friends carried her limp-ass body straight into her condo and put her to bed.
"I'm pretty sure this is you."
"Nope. I have a twin sister. That's her. You'll want to go to her place. This is just a big mistake, really."
"I'm also sure that you're an only child."
"How the hell would you know that?" Sydney thought briefly about running, locking herself in the bathroom, and calling the cops. But something about the way the guy was looking at her with burning deep green eyes and a kindly, far too amused smile kept her rooted to the spot. There was also the fact that she couldn't move faster than the pace of a snail without waiting to bend over double and retch up everything she'd eaten for a week. God, I am never drinking again.
"I have a very specific set of instructions."
The man stuck out one of those weathered hands. It looked non-threatening, with the blunt fingers and the square nails. The guy was shorter than she was, around 5'8", probably, and likely weighed no more than $140. She figured she could take him down if things ended up getting dicey. Her hand slowly closed around his. Her curiosity had always been her downfall. Years ago, she'd made the fatal mistake of wondering what it would be like to sleep with a guy who was pretty much her best friend since childhood. That went to hell in a damn handbasket in like 2.5 seconds. She'd moved to San Francisco because she wanted to see if she could make it on her own. Her sense of adventure drove her from home, drove her to try and make something of herself, which she'd failed pretty miserably at, too. Every single guy she'd ever dated was all wrong. They were mysterious, though, handsome. They'd find her at the grocery store, in the park, jogging, when she was out with her friends, when she was volunteering on public transit. They'd corner her with that mischievous glint in their eye and a wicked smile on their face, and she was done. Hook, line, and sinker because she couldn't help herself. She just kept thinking she couldn't pass up the chance at finding out if it could work. If there was still a decent guy left in the world. Unfortunately, she'd found out the hard way there wasn't. And after her latest dating disaster, she'd drunk herself under the table in the most epic of ways. Okay, pretty much the only way one could do that. Likely, literally. Though she couldn't remember if her friends had literally fished her out from under the grimy, gum-infested underside of a table off sticky floor tiles. Thank God. She arched a brow as her hand curled over his. He had a surprisingly strong grip, for a guy that was likely pushing 60. Francis, right?
"Excuse me?"
He pumped her hand once, then let his fall back to his side. "Your name?" "It's Francis. Morton, actually." "Okay, Francis." The guy's bushy gray eyebrows knit together.
"Why do you keep calling me Francis? That's not my name."
"Because you keep calling me Miss Underhill, and that's not my name."
"Twin sister or not, your name would still be Underhill."
"Ah." She stalled for time, searching her sloshy brain for a way out of the hole she was digging herself in deeper and deeper by the second. She still had no idea what she had done, and thinking about it only amped her anxiety in a big way. It did nothing for her poor stomach, which twisted violently, threatening to upchuck some of the contents of drinks she couldn't remember drinking. Maybe there had been a late-night poutine, too? She and Jasmine had been known to go out and get some greasy, gravy-smothered fries after a night out. Well, you see, I'm afraid that used to be my name, but I'm actually married now. My husband is going to be down here any second, and I'm afraid he's pretty crazy protective of me, and having guys show up on our doorstep won't be appreciated. You get it. You should probably go, if you don't want him to come down here and chase you back to your car. The guy, Francis, Martin, whatever, crossed his arms over his chest, a chest that was still surprisingly fit for an older dude. He actually made that black suit uniform-looking thing look pretty good. All that he was missing was one of those conductor-chauffeur-style cap things.
You're not married.
No? How the heck would you know? This time it was her turn to cross her arms. She wished she could slam the door in his face, but his foot was still there. She was growing steadily annoyed, and more positive by the second, that this guy didn't have underworld ties. He wasn't an undercover cop either, so she couldn't have done anything illegal the night before, which left the fact that he was some creepy dude looking for her for unknown reasons. That both infuriated and terrified her, and all she could do was produce a mental count in her hungover, cotton-thick brain and focus on breathing like a calm, rational person who had nothing to fear would do.
I have it on good authority. Now, I want you to get dressed, pack whatever you need, and come with me.
Sydney couldn't keep her mouth from falling open. Excuse me? Who the heck do you think you are, just showing up at my house and demanding that I come with you? Does that work on other women? Are you secretly a serial killer who is going to bag me and tag me and, stuff me in your trunk? Does that actually work with the ladies, Francis? The guy took a step forward and muttered something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like, "Heaven save me from idiots."
Look, miss, I have my instructions. They were to come to your house, which I know is registered to you because my firm never makes mistakes. I was given a list of places to take you to prepare you, and then I'm to drive you to the airport, where you will be put on a private jet and flown to Philadelphia.
What? Sydney's head already felt like a soupy mess, and this guy's strange statement and freaky familiar confidence wasn't helping. The fact that he was now standing inside her house was absolutely terrifying. I'm going to give you, 10 seconds to get out of here before I call the cops, Sydney said. She tried to force her voice to come out hard and commanding, but it shook like she was a scared little girl. Okay, so she was a scared, not-so-little girl. Francis, not Francis, rolled his eyes again. He muttered a few more choice words under his breath before he pulled out his phone again. He flipped to the camera roll and turned it around. He held it, proffered, there, outstretched between them like a gift. A gift of a rattlesnake that would strike, no doubt. Still, Sydney couldn't help herself. She'd never been able to help herself. Her mom always said that her wild spirit would lead her straight to hell one day, or more like it would get her into trouble. That's what her mom said, but at the moment, Sydney felt like she was going straight to hell. Because there, on the guy's phone, was a screenshot of her social media status, made sometime in the blacked-out hours, straight from a soul that was filled with regrets, pounded out by nimble fingertips known to make bad decisions from time to blacked-out time. That status was straight from the movie H.E. Double Hockey Sticks. It's been 10 years. You made me a promise. If the offer still stands, I'd like to take you up on it. Sydney's stomach sank straight to the bottom of her toes, and she was pretty sure it was going to be a bloody miracle if she didn't throw up all over the guy's fancy, shiny black shoes and pressed dress pants. Holy frickin' guacamole! Francis, not Francis, was there to drag her off, to get hitched. Chapter 3. Jessie. You're wedding what? Getting what? Married? Jesse winced as his mother swept into his office without bothering to knock. Of course, since she was his mom and his secretary, Crystal, a 22-year-old who'd just graduated college and was thrilled to get a decent job with a decent company, was easily swayed with bribes of chocolate chip cookies, angel food cake, and cherry tarts. No matter how many times he told her not to let anyone back into his office without calling him first, she didn't seem to understand that his mom was included in that category. Even though he'd just had a conversation with her a few days before and specifically told her.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?